Clear Valleys NHS, you have to say this, Foundation Trust. Also a part-time chaplain, and I've been asked to do 4 brief 15-minute, ending with a meditation, reflections on making meaning out of the pandemic. And I was asked, as I was chatting before this has been quite challenging, really, to how do we make meaning out of it? Yesterday, I began with a word, and the word was pangolin. Well, today I'm going to use another word. It's got a P in it as well. Unprecedented. I mean, there's all those jokes about the fact that the number of times we're using the word unprecedented is unprecedented. But what else can you use? We're floundering to make sense of this pandemic and its aftermath. I mean, unless you remember 1918, you've got to be at least 110 to do that. So very few people there. No one's ever seen anything like this. There have been pandemics, AIDS, of course, MERS and SARS, Ebola, but nothing like this that affects the whole world. It's killing people at the speed and at the rate that it is. It's affecting every country, every corner of every country, and it feels, and so the word unprecedented, we have never seen anything like it. Except, of course, it's not unprecedented. From the very beginning of time have been pandemics. From the first time human beings appeared on the earth have been pandemics. There have been plagues, famines, wars, natural disasters for millennia. Human beings have had to deal with that. So, sometime around 100,000 years ago, people like you, like me, evolved in East Africa. They began to wander. They wandered all over the world. As they wandered, and I guess they were seeking to understand. We can't imagine the big questions that tax them, but I wouldn't be surprised if there weren't similar questions that we ask. What happens when we die? Why are we here? Why are there random disasters? Why do plagues come and kill our people? We don't necessarily know how they answered those questions. We do know that asking those questions was so incredibly important to those people. We have very few architectural evidence of where Stone Age people lived. We have an enormous number of images of archaeological remains of the temples they built, edifices, standing stones. So if you imagine, I'm just going to share the screen a moment. Oh, on the wrong way. So I'll go backwards. Durham Cathedral. Oops. That didn't work, did it? No. Okay. Well, sorry, I can't share. I'm not going to go into it. But what we have is, I was going to show you, you can imagine in your mind, the strange rocks of Stonehenge, the towers in the Mexican jungle, temples by the Ganges and Durham Cathedral. These edifices speak to us of the urge to wonder that gripped human beings down the centuries. In fact, even more interestingly, we know that there was maybe little money around, little food around, very few resources, and yet people seem to use all their resources on these temples, on these standing stones. Evolution doesn't make any sense. Why would they have done that? And yet they did that everywhere. There isn't a culture in the world that didn't seem to spend more on its religious or cultic edifices than on anything else. So trying to come to terms with making sense of the world was the thing that people spent most of their money on. Wow. Of course, that urge had its downside. Sometimes when disaster struck, there seems to have been human sacrifice, glorification of war and conquest, the belief, which doesn't seem to have gone away really, that one tribe or nation was more especially favoured than others. Architectural splendour that emerged speak of strange otherness and maybe even goodness. but also of something far too familiar. Temples, churches, mosques speak of gods who are all too human, out for revenge, even quite petty. This is the way that human beings thought. Their brains, the same as our brains. We think the same way. We ask the same questions. We seek to understand. Those ways they thought would not disappear in a puff of logic when the Enlightenment arrived. And they're not going to disappear in us. The same people who built their temples. We have the same consciousness. We see natural beauty, sit in silence, think about the big questions of life. We too can be overwhelmed by wonder, and we can be terrified. At the same time, faced with difficulty or challenge, we can become illogical. So we ask ridiculous questions. What did I do to deserve this? Why would you done anything? Of course, we still ask it. Why is God punishing us? What have we done wrong? It make no sense. Still we ask. Still we bargain. If you make this go away, I'll ring my mother every week. So we begin then 100,000 years ago, but we begin even in ourselves with a human belief in something. We've got to be careful here. For some, this belief is in something outside, which has its own purposes. Classically, we might call that a god or God. For others, it can be anything. It can be the spark inside ourselves which longs to connect. It can be the incarnation and the belief that somehow we will return to perfect our lives. It can be wonder of nature or art or science. Whatever it is, having a belief, a purpose, seems to make us happier people. There's evidence for that. It's the echo of the same urge which built those temples, those standing stones. Today, many people feed that urge in many ways, through meditation, through walking in nature, through absorption in art. To do these things is to look after ourselves. To me, there's a key phrase in all of this, and it's this: do it to lose ourselves. That's very different from what the modern world is trying to get you to do. There is something that I call the happiness industry. It doesn't tell you to lose yourself, it tells you to find yourself. Buy this ticket, travel halfway around the world and sit in an ashram. Chase after a solar eclipse, or even fly into space and experience zero gravity. You will find yourself. You will be happy. It's a quick fix. It's all a desperate attempt to be fulfilled. While at the same time, there's an epidemic of mental ill health. Finding yourself part of the happiness industry. It all costs money. But spiritual exercise are free. Their heart is losing yourself. At the heart of prayer, whatever God you pray to, is the notion of losing yourself in something much greater than yourself. Artistic pursuits, you lose yourself in the music, you lose yourself in the art. Meditation, Buddhist meditation, you lose yourself to a consciousness which is bigger than you are. It's all an acknowledgement. This is challenge our modern world, but the acknowledgement is here. It's what those temples tried to say as well, that you are not the center of the world. This is the hard part. Not even the center of your own world. I say all of that, it could create an existential crisis, but actually the evidence is that if we do recognize that we're not the center of the world, then the burden is less on ourselves than we thought it was, and we can try and be part of something bigger. So I'm going to end with a kind of meditative exercise. You're not going to sit and meditate. I want you to look this time. Wherever you are, look around the room you're in, and ask yourself this first question. What's happening here? What's happening in this room? Look around. The things that are in this room, what are they telling you? Think about particular objects you notice. What are they telling you? And how does this room fit into the building that you're in? What's the role of this room in this building? Does it connect? And how does this building connect with the town or village or the organization that it's in? We look at it that way, it is quite a small thing, this room. And yet in this room, micro scale, will be mites. Yes, there really will be carpet mites and various bed bugs or whatever they are, they're here. Bacteria, which will spend their entire existence in this room. What was here before this room, in this room, before you used it? Who used it for what? Maybe know the last person to use it. You know the person before that or before that. And what was here before there was a room? What was on the land on which this room sits? What was here before there was even land? Where you are now was under the sea. And was it even here? What do we mean by here? What will be here once you've gone? You no longer use this room. Who will use this room? How will they use it? What will be here? This room falls down or is knocked down and maybe another building is built. Eventually everything will turn to dust. We'll be here then. We'll be here in thousands of years' time when Earth is consumed by the sun. What will here mean? In all that time, your presence here will be forgotten, like a shadow. Yet, maybe there is something bigger. It may not be a God, it may not even mean everlasting life. Something bigger. Science, or a purpose, or a philosophy. You are not the center, yet you can be part of something bigger. I'm going to end there. I realize I was screen sharing. I'm going to end there, and I don't know if anyone has any comments or questions they'd like to put into chat. Even sure I know. Oh yeah, there we are. Jane said she loved the different type of meditation. Thank you, Jane. I'm aware that so often meditations are just the same, aren't they? So thank you. Well, I hope I'm not. Thank you, Sophie. So at that point, our 15 minutes is over. Thank you for the comments you've made. Do add any others if you wish, and I'll be back at the same time tomorrow. Thank you.